she is going to be our speaker today, so I want you to give her your best attention and make sure that you're behaving the way that a Seneca student would. Second.
Two main focuses, prevention and recovery. So the prevention piece more involves all of you. It's where we try to show students and children that there's another way other than picking up drugs, that there are other choices that can be made. And then the recovery piece is the piece that I work for, which is when people go down a different path and they decide that they want to come into recovery and try to live life again. Then I am there to help assist them with that and work their recovery. So today I just want to tell you a little bit about my story and the life experiences that I've went through, and then just give you some suggestions, some things that I wish that I had learned when I was your age. Had I known these things, my life would have maybe went a different way. So I am from Tiffin, Ohio, so I have been living in Seneca County for the greater part of my life. This is me and 4 out of my 5 brothers. I grew up with a big family, 5 boys and me, and my mom and my stepdad. I had a pretty normal teenage life. I was on the flag squad. I was on the cheerleading squad at Tiffin Columbian High School. This is me and my friends at homecoming. Just typical. And what I can tell you about that time is I don't remember ever having an assembly like this. We had the DARE program, but I never sat in an assembly and listened to somebody tell me about their life or tell me anything about drugs. I don't remember learning very much about drugs at all at that time. I just lived a typical life. I didn't know anybody on drugs. I didn't know any of the warnings about that. And I had some issues going on at home. We didn't have very much money. There was some abuse, and I tried to just not bring that into my school life. So no one really knew what was going on at home. I didn't tell anyone. I just kind of lived my life at home, separate from my life in the school systems. This is me on the flag squad. I was the captain of the flag squad my senior year. So very normal, typical life. And I enjoyed it. I loved everything about school. I loved everything about having friends. But my main focus at that time was getting out of Tiffin. That was a goal of mine. I didn't want to be with my family. I didn't like going home at night. And so I wanted to get out of that environment as quickly as I can. So I married very quickly. I married when I was 19 years old, and I moved to Mansfield, and I had 2 children. And I just kind of went into the motherhood life. I thought that was what life was, that you would get married, and you have children, and you work, and that's it. I loved my children. I adored them. This is Kaylin, and I had a son named Noah. And they were the highlight of my life, but it was the only good thing about my life. I really wasn't happy, and I didn't tell anyone that. My marriage was falling apart. It started falling apart probably before it began, but you don't talk about those things. I was taught that we just don't discuss those things. So I kind of just moved along, being a mom and working, and I started developing depression. This is just another picture of me and my kids. Another picture of me and my kids. And when I had my son, I had a C-section, and it did not go very well. I had a lot of pain for a long period of time. And the doctor me on an opiate, Percocet. And the first time that I had that drug, I felt differently. It felt like I was finally happy. I felt energetic. I felt like this was something that I had been missing, that why didn't anybody tell me about these drugs before? Because now I finally love life. But that didn't last very long. I kept using the pills and I kept going doctor to doctor, and I quickly became addicted. And I asked myself at that time, why am I in my 20s becoming addicted to these medications? Like, I had tried drugs before, and that didn't happen. Why now? And it took me a really long time to learn that there isn't just one factor to addiction. There are multiple factors. Addiction runs in my family, and I didn't know that. My mom was an addict before I was born for a very long time. My father was an addict. He actually still is. My grandparents were addicts. And later on, 4 out of 5 of my brothers became addicts. So it ran in my family, and I didn't know anything about that. But it was also the circumstances in my life that were happening. That plays such a huge part in addiction. If something is going on in your life and you have that predisposition for addiction, then that can be the thing, that big bang that happens. There are so many factors, and I had learned that. So I tried to stop, and I couldn't. I got very sick. And I didn't like being sick. I couldn't take care of my children. So here I am, this mother in her 20s, and I'm taking these medications. I have to have them to wake up. I have to have them in the morning. I have to have them in the afternoon. And I have to have them in the evenings. And it's just a continuous cycle that I could not stop. My husband started taking them too. So both parents in the home are now taking these medications, and couldn't get him from the doctor anymore. He kind of figured that what was going on, obviously. And so I found them other ways. I started buying them from people that were associated with my husband. I found somewhere that I could get them regularly, and I am now an illegal drug user. Never committed a crime in my life. Never even had a speeding ticket. And I am now committing a felony by buying these medications on the street. That was about the time that children's service came into my life. I was partying, I started dropping weight, I didn't want to stop, and because of this environment, I lost my kids. They took my children and they put them in foster care. That was really hard. I only got to see them once a week, and every time they came, they would cry. Why do we have to leave? What did my daughter always say? I'll be good, if I can just stay. And there was nothing that I could do about it. I continuously watched her leave. And I tried to get help. I would try to go through the motions, starting the program to get help, but I didn't really believe at that time that it was like this big, serious problem. I was blaming everyone around me. Well, this is children's services shouldn't be taking my kids. It's not like I'm doing heroin. I haven't, robbed anyone or stolen from the store, so why did they take my kids? And that type of mindset really stopped me from being able to get clean and find recovery at that time. So eventually, when my kids would come to me, they would cry because they didn't want to see me. It went from them crying because they didn't want to leave to them not wanting to come to the visit at all. They wanted to be where they were at because it was stable and they knew them, and that was their family now. And that's how far I let it get at that time. I saw the pain in my kids' eyes. They just couldn't stop. They had a hold of me. From the very first drug, I was hooked. And I had to make a decision that would change the rest of my life. In 2013, I decided to give my children up for adoption. I gave them to the family that they were at, which is not a relative of mine. I would not be able to see them until they were 18 years old or know where they were. I had nowhere else for them to go, and I was not a fit mother. I knew that. I didn't want my children to have to suffer and go through this anymore. I didn't want them to become me. I wanted better for them. So I made that decision, and I walked out of the courtroom that day, and I was no longer a mother. I started using heroin the next day, and then started my heroin and crack cocaine binge. For years, I did nothing but use. I was homeless. I was living in crack houses. I spent over 2 years in county jails. Jail was really the only time I ate regularly and slept regularly. Other than the time that I was in jail, I spent my days living on floors, couches, in tents, in people's backyards, on a bench in the park, in a shed, wherever I could, doing whatever I could to get the drugs because I did not care anymore. I was no longer a mother. I had no purpose in life. I didn't have a college degree. I didn't have any education. I had no work experience. I couldn't hold a job. I had no license. I had no car. I had no friends, no family, and I barely had my freedom. Those are my mugshots from 5 of the times I was in jail. I was in jail over 30 times. In 2015, I contracted a virus in my arm called necrotizing fasciitis. It's actually called flesh-eating virus. It was eating my arm from using a needle. I had to be life-flighted to Toledo. I was put in a coma. I was in a medically induced coma for 7 days while they operated on my arm every day to try to stop the infection from spreading to my organs. I ended up having to sign a release saying that they could take my arm from the shoulder because at the time they felt that it was take my arm or take my life. So I signed a paper and I went down for the operation, the last operation, and I woke up and the surgeon told me that they were actually able to save my arm by taking my muscle. So I do not have a right muscle, a bicep muscle. He said I'd never be able to use my arm again. But I had an arm and I was pretty happy because I did not know what I was going to do being a drug addict with one arm. They sent me to a nursing home for 30 days and the surgeon, he said to me, you know, they wanted to just take a skin graft from your leg and put it on your arm. And that would have horrible. My arm would have been completely deformed. He said the nurses and the other surgeon, they wanted to do that because it takes like an hour. And they said, she's just a drug addict. Why are we going to spend our time sewing her arm up when she's just going to go out and die? He said, but I talked them into doing the procedures. I want to give you a chance. So they sat in there with him and he sewed my arm up stitch by stitch all the way to my shoulder so that it would look normal. And he said, I did that for you. I would like for you to get clean for me. And he made me promise that I would never use again. And I promised him. And I meant it at that time. I did. But you can't promise someone something like that if you really inside are not going to follow through. I can't promise my kids that. I can't promise the surgeon that. So I started using right away in the nursing home. That was when my first overdose happened. I had multiple overdoses over the years, and Narcan multiple times. From the nursing home, they actually sent me to jail, and I spent 6 months in jail. The probation officer had to die anyway. She didn't think that I would ever get clean, and she just didn't want to be there to watch it happen. So I spent 6 months in jail, and I went to a CDCF program, which is a community-based felony program, where they don't just lock you up, but they also treat you for addiction. So I was away for a year. I got 1 year off the drugs. I did really good work in my addiction there, and I started to really see how big the problem was with me. But I wasn't ready to stop. I was still hurting. I was hurting for my kids. And I had really focused on that. I wasn't admitting that. In fact, the whole time I was at the treatment center, nobody there even knew I had kids. So obviously I wasn't doing that internal work that I needed to do. And I got out, and a year clean, I relapsed 3 days later. I stole my mom's car, and I went and I used. I overdosed. I was Narcaned in a house full of drug addicts. And when I woke up, I got in the car, and I decided to drive home. The way that Narcan works is it stops what's going on in your body when you use opiates. It's a life-saving measure. So once the medicine is given to you, it blocks the opiates so that you don't feel those effects. But it doesn't last forever. And the drugs out here are strong. And the drugs in my system lasted longer than the Narcan did. And I passed out at the wheel driving home. I went to the left, I blew a gas line, I hit a tree, I swirled around, and I went into a house in Bloomville, Ohio. That was the last charge I ever got. That brought me into Judge Repp's courtroom in Tiffin Municipal Court, my hometown. I stayed on probation for about a year, and I did okay for a little bit, but I ended up right back where I started. I did well, and then I ended up homeless again, using every day, absolutely nothing to my name, and they were about done with me at the court system. Honestly, with the 5 drug courts that I've been in, the 5 counties I've had charges in, the $3,000 in reinstatement fees and fines that I had, I thought everyone was done with me. The last time I got arrested, I was in a car in Fremont, in a parking lot, in an Arby's parking lot, and I had just used with someone else, and we were both barely conscious, so someone called the police. After the police made sure we were okay, they took me to jail because I had a warrant for Tiffin. I went in front of Judge Repp, and he said, "Oh my God, you look like you're gonna die." And I begged him to let me out, and I told him I had a job. I didn't have a job. I hadn't worked in years, but I told him I had a job, I need to get out today. And he said something that changed my life. He said, "If I let you out, you're gonna die. We've tried it your way, Stephanie. Now we're gonna try it my way." He left me in jail for 30 days, and he sentenced me to the Vivitrol shot. The Vivitrol shot is a monthly injection that if you're a user of opiates, you get the monthly injection, and it will block the opiates if you were to use, and it blocks the cravings. So for a whole month, for 30 days or 28 days, that you wouldn't have all of the cravings that you would have for drugs, and if you wanted to get high, you would not be able to. It would block that. So he gave me that before I got out of jail. When I was sitting in jail that last time, and I was thinking about what he said, one of the deputies came up to me and she said, "What are you going to do when your kids come and find you when they're 18? What are you going to do when they see you and you look like this?" It never occurred to me that my kids might come find me. In my mind, it was forever. I lost them, they're gone forever. That was the first time that it occurred to me that they might come and find me, and I might be able to explain to them what happened. And that was the moment that my mind changed. So I got out of jail, and a new program was starting in Tiffin called the Pivot Drug Court Program. The Pivot Program is designed for people that are substance users. And the program helps you go to classes, and there's daily check-ins in the beginning. You have court every week. You pretty much have to be in the recovery program for about 40 hours a week. So it's very intense. Lots of drug tests. I had a caseworker who was there to help me with things I needed because I came out of jail with nothing. I was literally homeless. I got out. I had nothing to my name. I had nobody to call. I had no place to go. I didn't have a license or a car, and I didn't have a job. So that's how I'm walking out of jail. So the caseworker for Pivot was able to help me figure out what the plan was going to be for me, and I dove right into it. Immediately I went to every class. I didn't miss anything. I was ready like this. I was changed. I wanted recovery. I wanted to live, and it was a really new feeling for me. I had always, since I lost my kids, resigned that I was going to die one day, and that was what my purpose was. So when I came into the drug court, and I was the first participant of the drug court, and all of these people are following behind me, I felt like I had a purpose again. My purpose is to stay clean and show that recovery is possible. And I dove into that head first. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I started, there's my arm again, it's the scar. There's a couple of pictures of me at my worst. It's pretty bad, huh? So, here's me finally understanding that there is a life out there to be celebrated. And I kept going with it. I got a job. I started working full time. Within a month, Pivot helped me get an apartment. I absolutely loved being in recovery, and I started speaking and going to meetings every night and events, and just diving head in really helped me. It helped me be the person that Judge Rupp thought I could be. When people started following me, I would give rides and help other people find recovery and talk to people about how important life is and that we all do deserve a second chance. We can make different choices. The newspaper did a couple of articles on me, and I just really focused on what does Stephanie want out of life? What kind of life does Stephanie want? That's my family. My brothers, I have 2 brothers, and they're currently in Pivot Drug Court, so I'm hoping that will go well for them as well. My mom has her daughter back. I'm a friend again. I got to reunite with all of my family and friends and present them with this person that does love and care and have compassion and does want life, does want to celebrate life. I started working in recovery when I was 1 year clean. I started in a treatment center, and I ended up moving to where I'm at now, which is Lotus Recovery House. The Mental Health Board of Seneca, Seneca, Wyandotte, and now Ottawa counties purchased and opened a recovery house for women. A recovery house is somewhere that women can go when they're in the type of position that I was in. Getting out of jail, wanting recovery, but having nowhere to go, having nobody that they can lean on. So I take those women in, and they live in our home, and they start their recovery, and they're able to work their drug court, and their caseworkers for children's services can bring their kids there to visit, and we just have goals that we set, and we move forward in their recovery so that they can get back all the things that they lost. It is not too late for them to get back all of those things. Eventually, about 2 years into my recovery, I met a man, and I was married just last year. He's a wonderful person. He's in recovery as well. Similar story to mine. Came into recovery with nothing and worked super hard for what he has. And I'm just so grateful that I get the opportunity to be a part of a family. It's a wonderful feeling. we were asked a very big question. Someone in the community was having a baby, and she wasn't ready for that. So she asked us to adopt the baby, and I thought long and hard about that because all I ever wanted was to be a mom. And I had let that go, and I had resigned that I would never be able to do that. And I found a new purpose and a new passion in my life, but I couldn't pass up the opportunity. So Kylie Renee was born in February of 2021. I was in the hospital room and I took her home the next day. She is amazing. Being a mom again is amazing. Just getting to have the opportunity to try again and experience the things that I wasn't going to be able to experience is a miracle to me. While I've been working on my recovery, the parents that have my children contacted me. They saw that I was doing these things, and I have been able to start getting pictures of my children, and I got a letter from my daughter. And I get updates on my phone from their mother all the time now. I shouldn't have that. I'm not supposed to be able to know where they're at. And I get to have all these amazing pictures of my kids and what they're doing. And it's wonderful. This is me with the Lotus Recovery House ladies. This is my daughter, she's 15. And that's my son, he's 10. And this was this year. So being able to have that stuff is like, I know one day I'm going to get to see them. And when I do, I get to present them with this person. And I get to explain to them that I made some really bad choices, and that it wasn't their fault, that this was mine, and I'll be able to let them know that I did it out of love, and that keeps me going every day. It's me and my husband and Kylie Renee Churella. She's 2 years old, she's going on 2 years old, and she's a spitfire. I'm just a 40-year-old woman that has went through some really terrible things, and I'm trying to use those to make sure that someone else doesn't have to go through them. During the time that I was living and using, I experienced some things that no human being should ever experience, and I did things that no human being should ever do. And it was because I needed that drug. I needed it. And that never would have happened if I would have made the right choices in the beginning, if I would have known what to do. So I'm going to share with you a few things that I have learned along the way, and I'm hoping that you take them with you and use them as you go on through your high school years and into your future. No, that's okay. Show me your friends and I'll show you your future. The people that you're hanging out with right now, they're going to be who you become. You become adults together. So the people that you're with, that you're spending time with, make sure they're people that have goals that you want to accomplish. Make sure they're people that are making decisions that you feel in your gut is right. Knowledge is power. The things I'm telling you today is that knowledge is powerful for you now. You have the knowledge to make the right decision. You know what could happen if you make the choice to pick up drugs. So use that in the future. Keep learning. Keep exploring and learning what are the right choices. What could happen if you make the wrong choices? It's so powerful. You have the power to make that choice at this age. Know what you stand for, because if you know what you stand for, then when somebody comes to you and asks you to do something, then you already have the right answer. If you know in your gut what you're made of, what you stand for, and what you believe in, no one can stop you from making the right choice. Bad days are just a part of the journey. I used to think that every bad day was the end of my life. I used to take a bad day and go make terrible choices because who cares? But we all have to experience bad days. It doesn't mean that we have to pick up drugs on it, run away, make terrible choices. We can just get through that day and go on to the next. They're just a part of the journey. My addiction started with a choice. Once I chose it, I couldn't control it. The disease had me. But I made the choice to use those drugs. There would have been no way for me to know whether I was an addict or not. The choice was mine, and the choice is yours. It starts with that choice. And it's never too late to start over. I started over so many times I can't even count, but I kept giving myself another chance. Because I didn't give up, because I gave myself that last chance, I now have a life I didn't even know was out there. I work and I pay my taxes and I have a car and I own my own home. I have a wonderful life because I started over. It's never too late to step back and say, wait a minute, I'm gonna redirect because this isn't what I want. It's okay to do that. Anytime you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. Think about that. Anytime you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. So if you're given a choice to pick up and you say yes, you're saying no to your future. You're saying no to college. You're saying no to family and having a good life. You're saying no to all those things when you say yes to picking up. So those are just a few of the life lessons that I learned that I really wanted to share with you. What I want to leave you with is, you don't have to go through what I went through. Even if you're going through something right now, you don't have to let it get that far. You can stop right now and redirect. Find someone and talk to them. Because I know anyone in this school will help you. But no one has to make the choices I made. There's a better life out there. There's a life worth celebrating, and drugs are not in it. Thank you. No, I haven't. She asked if I've got to talk to my kids since they were adopted. I have not yet. I got a letter from my daughter, and then I get the pictures from their adoptive mother, and we are discussing a possible visit in the future. We've just started that process, and I'm trying to let her lead the way because it's not just scary for me, it's gotta be scary for her. She has no idea what to expect, and I don't want to make her feel like I'm trying to push it. I made the decision because I wanted them to have that life. So I'm letting her lead the way and really decide when that time will be. Yeah. been on drugs just under 10 years, about a decade. Oh, in jail, 2 years. About 2 years. 5 different jails and about 2 years of jail time. How old was I? I just got out of jail. I'm 5 years into recovery. So the last time that I went to jail was January 18th, 2018. So I was 35 years old when I got clean. Took too long, I think. Anyone else? Yes. How did I cope when I was in the drug addiction? I didn't cope. I continued to use. I went through some really horrific things when I was using, and I'm not going to share, but it was horrific living in houses where there was only drug users and drug dealers, and the only way I knew to cope was to continue to use more drugs. But since then, since I came into recovery, I have learned so many other coping mechanisms. You know, when I'm angry, I go for a walk, put my headphones in, call somebody. I go to recovery meetings. I actually run a recovery meeting on Monday nights in Tiffin. I like to read. Journaling is an excellent coping mechanism. Exercise. These are all things that I use now. I didn't know about them then. And I didn't know or I didn't want to. But now that I use them, they all work wonderful. Yes. Do I ever have an urge to do drugs in my recovery? Absolutely. Almost every day I think about using. Not wanting to use, but I think about drugs almost every day. I work in recovery, so obviously it's always the topic of conversation, but it's never going to go away from me. I just have the coping mechanisms now to stop the thoughts before they get further than that. But I do think about it all the time. I do. How was I able to survive all the drug overdoses? The first time I overdosed, I was Narcan, and then what I explained before was the Narcan is a medication that they put up your nose and it stops the overdose from happening. So they did that by running into a seizure, so they took me to the ER. And the other times the Narcan was used on me, and I was able to come back to life. Luckily, the drugs are getting stronger, and it's taking more doses of the Narcan all the time, and I have a lot of friends that passed away this year. My best friend passed away in February of this year. It's scary out there right now. The drugs aren't what they used to be. They were already terrible. Imagine that times 100. Your first time could be the last time. Oh, okay, so pretty dangerous. I was using heroin and crack cocaine, and I was using it with a needle. So I don't think it gets more dangerous than that. And I was using it every day. And this started from just a prescription from the doctor when I was in my 20s. It's not like I grew up from 10 years old, using with my family. I came upon this from a doctor's prescription. I was already into my adulthood, and I took it all the way to using a needle, heroin and crack cocaine. That's how serious this is right now.
Can you tell us about how the doctors have switched what their prescriptions are?
Yes. So, at the time when I was prescribed, the doctors were prescribing a lot of opiates. Opiates to anyone that had pain. Emergency rooms were being told that this is how we treat patients to make them feel better, and they were prescribing tons of opiates all over the country. But because people like me, hundreds, thousands of people like me that became addicted, they have now since learned that that is not the right way to treat pain. And they've switched and they're finding other ways to treat it because it's so addicting. They had no idea this storm was going to happen. I mean, there are doctors and teachers and lawyers and judges that are in the same position that I am. They could be standing right here because they also were prescribed from a doctor. So they have changed and they are not doing that anymore. But it's just so important for you to know the dangers because if you break your leg, they may very well offer you a Percocet. And I'm telling you, that is how it started for me, right there. And I want you to make the choice, how much pain am I really in? Is it worth it? Or is there another avenue that I can take?
Hold on 1 second. Both of you are asking a question. Do you have any friends that were in a drug house that have died? It's like
Oh, yes. Yeah, I haven't had any friends in the drug house that have died. So many I can't even count. I've lost virtually everyone that was around me using is gone. Friends, family members. My brother died of an overdose in 2006. It's everyone around me. I am lucky that I got out when I did. I don't think I'd be alive if I would have stayed in another year. Yes. Judge Rock was the turning point for me. And actually just this past year, I gave him a plaque with my recovery picture on it and a little poem because I feel that that moment was the moment that saved my life. Because he had a decision that he could have made. He could have just left me in jail, he could have let me out, or he could have left me in jail and had me sit just the rest of my time because he knew how long I had been doing this with the systems. I mean, I've been in so many drug courts, he really shouldn't have taken a chance on me. And so him taking that moment to tell me he wanted me to live, it changed my life, he saved my life. Probably 100. Once I was in pivot drug court, we have to go every week, but before that, I had 10 years of charges. I have, I think, almost 20 charges. I've been in jail 30 times. I have a felony, multiple misdemeanors, traffic charges, driving without a license. I've been in court, like I pretty much lived in court. Up at the top. Go ahead. The longest time I used it before I went to jail? Maybe 6 months. Maybe I needed 6 months before I got picked up again. It usually wasn't longer than that, and I would spend like a couple days or a month in jail, and then get out and have another 6 months of using. But when I got out, I went right back to where I was. I would go right back to whatever situation I was in and pick up using again immediately. I even used in the jail. So when we lost our kids, my ex-husband left the state, and I never saw him again. I actually had to get Judge Rep and Judge Shuff helped me get a divorce without him present. I had 5 years later, I got a divorce. I have never seen him again. I don't know. I know he's alive, and I don't know what his situation is. I just know that he couldn't handle what was going on, and he could not handle the charges he was facing because he was facing child endangerment, and he left me. He left me there. used every drug. I don't think there's a drug I didn't use, but heroin and crack cocaine I used daily. I didn't care, like whatever was available, because it wasn't about the drug for me, it was about I didn't want to feel. I wanted to be numb to what was going on. I didn't want to have to deal with the emotions I was going through, so I would look for any drug I could, but it was mostly heroin and crack cocaine at the time. And now, I use therapy to learn how to feel correctly. I go to counseling to deal with my emotions. I have coping skills that I use to make sure that my thoughts of using never get to the using stage. How I feel if my kids ended up going down the same path. I'm gonna be devastated. Although I know it's a possibility, it runs in their family. But I do know that the family that they're with are wonderful people. They know the dangers, they know my life, and I believe that they're taking the measures that they need to make sure that that doesn't happen. Oh, was there a recovery process with my arm? Yeah, so when I went to the nursing home, they actually had to open my arm all the way up, so it was all the way open, and they put a wound back in it, and then it just like continuously sucked out the infection, and I had to have that on for quite a while, and then once they got to the phase where they sewed it up, I was on a continuous antibiotic for 30 days in a nursing home. So it was pretty serious. And then it was rehabilitation after that at the nursing home. Although I was using the whole time, I did go to the rehabilitations and like miraculously I had full use of my arm. And I had that muscle. I can pick up a box. And I think that's, to me, it's a miracle. Yes. It hurt for years. In fact, sometimes it still hurts because the nerves are all damaged in it. They had to slice it all the way down the middle, so they essentially cut all muscle and nerves, and they did the best they could to reconnect, but I do have some pain still, but it was extremely painful, you know. The longest I went without eating? Probably like 4 or 5 days. Honestly, when I was using it, I didn't care about eating at all. Like I would go, you don't think about anything but using. So I went days without eating, and then I would get arrested and I would have a solid meal. The jail food is not something to be excited about. It's really, really gross, but at least I would get something I was eating. How did I afford the drugs? When you're in an addiction like that, and you have to have that to survive, and your mind tells you that you have to have that to survive, you'll do anything. So I did anything. I sold my body. I made deals that I never followed through on. I borrowed from family, which is what ended up getting them out of my life. I did anything I could. Instead of what?
Instead of going to college.
Well, I did go to college. I did both. When I came into recovery, I did go to schooling, and I have 2 certifications with the state of Ohio to work in recovery. So that actually came first. The first couple of years of my recovery, I worked really hard at getting the schoolwork done that I needed. I have a peer recovery support certificate from the state of Ohio, so I can work with people that are coming into recovery. And then I have a chemical dependency counselor assistant certificate, so I can work in groups and in a treatment center. So that was my first focus, was getting Stephanie together. Then
I think he was asking
Oh, why didn't I choose to go to college? Oh, good question, actually. Nobody in my family was pushing me to go to college, and I honestly just made a really bad choice. If I would have had somebody kind of say, hey, why don't you try this, then it might have been different for me. But it was never even a thought to me. I was on to working and moving forward right away, and I didn't even think about it. Over the years that I was with my first husband, I tried to go back to school several times, and once you leave high school and go into the world, it is extremely hard to get back into college. It's something that's so, it's just very difficult. I wish I would have went from high school straight to a dorm. My life would have been much different. Okay, I'm going to take one of these down here. Go ahead. What was that? The way that the drugs work is it hits the chemicals in your brain. So they know now that addiction is a disease because once you take it, it actually changes what's going on inside your brain. It increases your dopamine levels and it makes you extremely happy. And when it increases those dopamine levels and you go back to not using it and you don't have that, your body and your mind craves that high dopamine. So you are starting that process the first time that you take a drug. And if you have that addiction in you and if you're in the right circumstances, things in your life are going kind of rough, it's going to be even easier for you to want to stay on that drug. It's like the devil, I feel like. It gives you this feeling that makes you think that you are very happy. This dopamine levels makes you feel extremely happy, but when you don't have it, that's when the danger comes. That's when you want something that you don't have, and you'll do anything to stop it. Which is why I always say, find another way. Make a different choice. You do not have to go through what I went through to get to where I am.